Hey, Emma.
Yes, Mount.
What do you call it when you're meandering about and you decide to end that?
I don't know. What do you call it?
You call it Wanderstop. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your...
Sorry,
Yeah,
I was still laughing through the whole intro.
Good. Nice. I'm your... I don't know. Maybe at some point in my life I'll be at a place to play Wanderstop host, Madelyn.
I'm your... Man, I don't know. There's not even a joke to make about Valiant Hearts.
Franz Ferdinand.
No, I hope I'm not Franz Ferdinand.
I'm your Take Me Out host, Emma.
Is that what that song's about?
That's the name of the band. I know, but is that what that is? Is he hoping that you'll take him out like Franz Ferdinand?
Is it a meta
question.
commentary thing?
I'll look it up on Genius after this. We'll see what the lyrics mean. Anyway, this week on Talk This, we are talking about Valiant Hearts, the Great War, and Wanderstop. Did you get that from the joke? I decided this week that the spirit of Wanderstop was such that I shouldn't try.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I could try to come up with a better, more forced joke, but the spirit of that game is that, like, actually I shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Very true.
And when you say next time, Madelyn, it feels like you did that again, I'll say that's just the spirit of, I'll figure out a way to justify it.
Yeah. We'll see what the games are next time, and then you can start thinking of how you're going to do it. Instead of thinking of the joke.
Yeah. Exactly. I could take some time to think of the joke, or I could think of excuses for why the joke will be bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, first let's talk about a game that is, well, I mean, I don't know, it has some humor in it, which seems a little polarizing, to be honest. But Valiant Hearts, the Great War, which is on sale for like $2 on Switch right now. Had this week been different, I might have gotten it, but I didn't.
That's okay. I am not in a place where I want to experience World War I, so...
Yeah, well, me either. Just generally, like, I don't know how many people feel like they are in a place where, you know, like, I could use a good trench. That's what I'm looking for right now.
Anyway, Valiant Hearts, The Great War, 2014 puzzle adventure game from Ubisoft, specifically Ubisoft Montpellier.
They're French.
They're French. During that time when Ubisoft was occasionally making like weird little 2D games like this, like Child of Light stuff.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. They were making it with like what was the engine? Like the UbiArt framework.
Yes.
Which was originally for Rayman, but they used it for a couple of like not stereotypically Ubisoft games as well during this time period, of which Valiant Hearts was one of them.
And Valiant Hearts was originally a solo project from artists. Their names are all so French. Paul Tumelaire. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, sure. That's about right, I think.
Good enough. Which he like started in 2011, and then a little later he was like, actually, let's bring on some other people. And it did have a recent sequel on Netflix games, which is funny.
Yes, it was not received very well. It also got a Steam release. It was not received very well there because it was kind of short, which I imagine is kind of a symptom of it being like for the Netflix platform.
What's up with Netflix games, dude?
Didn't they close it?
Didn't they just close it?
I thought I remember that, but I could also be mixing that up with some other
a game studio, a game thing that's still open. Let's see.
For some reason, I thought that they had pulled back from like their actual like studios.
I mean, Netflix games still exists.
Yes, they still have stuff on the platform in terms of like making their own. I feel like they had stepped back from that.
I don't know. Top stories. Avowed game director joins Netflix games developer Night School Studio.
Yes, but they had like a game they were making at Netflix Games. Like, not a studio they had bought.
Anyway, Valiant Hearts, The Great War, was released on the 100th anniversary of World War One. Made by this, it's interesting to think of, like, the World Wars feel very removed for me. I mean, some elements of World War II perhaps feel less removed now. Yep. But it was interesting in reading about this to be reminded of how differently, like, the French feel about World War One than I do. You know?
Yes.
They were all like, our grandparents were a part of this.
I mean, you know, that could be true for American grandparents
it's
too.
True,
but it was
in a very different way.
Yes. The game actually ends around the time of the U.S. joining World War One. So technically, it's the period of World War One before America was even, like, officially a part of it.
Although we still have an American character.
Yes.
Freddie.
Yeah, give us the lore corner, the history corner, maybe.
Yeah, it's really the Madelyn cracks open a textbook corner. All right, so in Valiant Hearts, which I keep trying to call Wild Hearts because we just played that game at PAX that was Fresh Tracks that was very like Sayonara Wild Heartsy, and now I've got Wild Hearts in my head.
This Valiant is not Hearts. Very Sayonara Wild Heartsy.
There is a rhythm game with a vehicle, so there is a moment where it is kind of like Sayonara Wild Hearts.
You know, you're right.
And Queen Latifah does play Frenchman Emile. Just kidding. So yes, there are kind of four main characters in the game. The Frenchman Emile, his German son-in-law Carl, the American soldier who, like, he's actually fighting for the French army, I think. I need to find that. Yes, he's American in the French army, Freddie, and Belgian nurse Anna. And there's also a dog named Walt.
Yes, a medical dog.
Of which there were a lot. And so throughout the 4 chapters of the game, you play variously as these characters who are all on different sides of the war. And it's sort of, it's an interesting exploration at first and throughout of, you know, many families who lived more or less on the border between France and Germany ended up in very difficult situations where people were being drafted into, like, the armies that were not where they lived or deported into countries that they hadn't lived and ending up fighting on different sides of the war from their family members, just, like, by unfortunate happenstance. So that's kind of what this game depicts. Carl is a German citizen, and he gets deported from France, where he's, you know, he has a wife and a kid and a father-in-law, and drafted into the German army, but his father-in-law Emile gets drafted into the French army. Emile gets captured. He's like, has to cook for the Germans. Carl sees him, but isn't able to free him because there's an American attack. Emile gets out and hooks up with Freddie, links up with Freddie, who's an American in the French army. They also meet Anna, who is a battlefield nurse and aspiring veterinarian. So a vet and a vet. I know. Well, I almost wrote aspiring vet, and I was like, in my notes, and I was like, ha ha ha, double meaning. Anyway, they're all, like, after Baron von Dort, who's, like, in many reviews, perhaps too cartoonish villain. Like, pretzel loving, mustache twirling, bratwurst eating, kind of evil German military leader. There's a bunch of, like, battle-y things that happen, as happens in a war, and they eventually, spoilers, get the Baron, but Freddie, despite the whole thing being he's out for revenge, decides not to kill him, since he won't gain anything from his death. Instead, he's demoted, he's sent away, a fate worse than death. Anyway, meanwhile, Carl finally escapes from a prisoner of war camp, he gets reunited with his son. Meanwhile, Emile accidentally kills kind of an evil, mean officer, and then he gets executed. Anyway, war is bad, is the Madelyn lore corner, essentially.
I do think it is always quite... They talk about this in a lot of the interviews and a lot of, like, the reviews of this, but, like, World War One is not a very popular setting for video games in the way that, like, World War II is.
Yeah.
Because, World War II, very obvious villains in World War II, Obviously, the same way of, like, people on the ground, it sucks for them, right? But you know who the bad guy is in World War II.
Yeah.
My impression of World War I is
and
kind
also,
of
like,
just
grand set-piece battles in World War II. Like, famous, big battle set pieces.
Sure. My impression of World War I is mostly, like, I don't know, this sucks.
Yeah. Like, wow, hundreds of years of complex geopolitical situations led to this.
Yeah.
And also, there's gas.
But as you already said, too, as a American, my perspective is also very much more like World War II is like the war that we participated in more.
Yeah.
Right? The war that they bombed our soil or whatever, right? So I also think that there's more of an emphasis on that in our schooling, for better or for worse, than like World War I, where we kind of just like popped in there at the end, said, stop it.
I don't know. I have vivid memories of learning about World War I. Well, Franz Ferdinand specifically.
Oh, you do?
Middle school. I think you could make a pretty good Franz Ferdinand. This is me again being like, a heist game. But like, there's some kind of Franz Ferdinand game to be made.
But yeah, I was reading a like scholarly article on Valiant Hearts, of which there's like several, honestly. It's called Playing Through to Europe, Depiction and Reception of the First World War in the Video Game Valiant Hearts by Jacob Sindelar, which I'm pronouncing wrong because there's a bunch of symbols on those.
Sorry, Jacob.
But one of the things it pointed out is like, or something I got from one of the quotes in it was like, the medium of video games is more playful, and people in Europe are very sensitive about the First World War in a lot of ways. So it's hard to choose that period to like put your game in. Whereas, there's a lot of World War II games that range the gamut of tones from like serious to like Wolfenstein, which is like serious and not serious at the same time, right? But you're able to do that because those are cartoonish villains that are a part of that war. There aren't as clear like cartoonish villains in World War I, so you can't. It would be hard, I think, to make a comedy game about World War I.
Yes. It's not very funny.
Yes. One of the other points that point out is people are also kind of weirdly racist about World War I, of course. They're talking about Battlefield 1, which came out 2 years after this, also set during World War I, had a black soldier on its cover that people were very upset about, even though World War I also stretched to like the Middle East and stuff. And Freddy in Valiant Hearts is also mixed race, I believe. That's why he is in France, so he can get married, essentially, legally. So it's interesting to think about that too, of like just like balancing also like the friggin' military weirdos that are out there too.
Yeah, that is something you have to be so careful with any military game, right? I don't even mean people in the military, to be clear. I just mean people with military interests.
Yes, the military otaku.
Yes. Can be weirdos. Like otaku of any kind.
Yeah.
But they're out there. But yeah, the team here really wanted to make a game about World War I that wasn't like a shooter. Partially because they were just like, well, with how it worked then, you got shot and then you died. So that wouldn't be fun. And also, that would just be horrible. So they made this game, sort of a puzzle game. They talk in some interviews a little bit about how, when you're making a puzzle game, it makes the moments of action that much more impactful. Because the player, like, you don't have to do a lot for it to feel like a lot. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was interesting. And it also, like, they researched it, at least as they described it, pretty intently. Like, they went to the trenches. Yeah. They read a lot of correspondence. It's not based on anyone in particular's family story, but, like, they drew on their own family histories and that sort of thing. And they put all of that information, or a lot of that information, in the game, which gamers had mixed responses to, overall.
Yeah.
We don't like reading.
There's an interesting, this might be where you're pulling it from. There's an interesting article on Vice from 2014 from Mike Diver that was like an interview with Adrienne Lacey and also the sound director. Adrienne Lacey, the like development director, I believe. But yeah, they were talking a lot about like the research they did and like, yeah, like going to the trenches and seeing the difference in the kinds of trenches. And also how close together they are. Like you could be like feet away in your French trench and the German trench is like right there and you could probably hear them talking. You're that close. And they also talked about like German trenches are like they made them so that like somewhat comfortable to like live in, which like wild to me. Like I don't really think about that. Like yeah, in the trenches means they were like there.
Yeah.
Like they were living there.
Yeah.
The French side was apparently a lot more rough and ready. The trenches they visited, at least, not quite as comfortable as you can imagine a trench being. But I did think it was very interesting to like hear them talk about it and the research they did and like thinking about that to like certain scenes from the games and the way that they incorporate that into it, I think was very interesting.
And the game was pretty well reviewed overall. You know, some people felt like a little slow, a little, I don't know, not preachy, but like too like, this is a playable history lesson. I am here to teach you things.
Yeah, they did. You said this a little bit, but they do include like facts about like the stages that you're in and like the sort of events going on at the time as well that you're able to read during Valiant Hearts, which, you know, gamers don't like reading, so.
They really don't. That's like the 2025 talk that I feel like we have refrains of the year. Sometimes gamers don't like reading has come up a lot this year. But it's all done in this kind of like lovely dark cartoon art style, which is very, very nice to look at, pleasing to look at. But one thing I think this game and Wanderstop maybe have in common in a weird way is a little bit of a tension between the story being told and sometimes the gaminess of the game, right? Like I saw some reviews that were like, yeah, it was, it's cartoony, and then sometimes like your boss battles being extra cartoony, like that humor was nice. And then I also saw some that said, well, it felt weird to suddenly be like blowing up barrels, for like a cartoonish giant boss or something. Not exactly like that, but it felt weird to like shift into this like very gamey mode sometimes. Or I don't remember what review this was. Somebody called out that the healing, like the simple little healing mini game, kind of took them out of it because it just felt like, this was like a very like dark and painful and like sort of intimate moment, whatever, and it felt weird to suddenly have like a little like button press timing game, basically. Yeah. And so like there's some tension there between sort of the serious story being told and the fact that this does have to be a video game, which I think is a challenging balance always.
Well, The Last of Us had only just invented narrative, so we weren't aware, like, developers weren't aware that, like, you could make a game, like, without gameplay in it.
Yeah. They were confused by, like, they were like, the addition of narrative here. Like, this is a lot to chew on.
But seriously, I do feel like it sort of came out at a time when, like, people were like, oh, walking simulators, right? Yeah. So I do wonder if there's a bit of, like, self-consciousness of, like, well, we have to make sure that they remember that they're playing a game. And it's not just like a sad little thing for them to go through.
Well, it's Ubisoft. They weren't going to make these were guys who were working on Rayman.
Sure. I just feel like if you were to make it like today, and I actually do wonder how much whether the like Netflix games version is any different at all in terms of like amount of mini games. I didn't look into it at all.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if they made it today, I feel like they could dig a lot of like the mini games out and like people would be more receptive to it than they would have been in 2014, if that makes sense.
I do think that's true. Fortunately, you can pet the dog.
Yeah.
Do you think we are moving beyond that?
Petting dogs?
Where are we in the pet the dog arc?
I don't know.
Everybody loves the dog in this game. Dog.
Yeah.
Very good.
Does the Can You Pet the Dog have a Blue Sky account? I haven't actually looked for it. Because I'm not on Twitter anymore, so I will never know. I'll never have the news on whether you can pet the dog. I do feel like that's another source of like adding a little bit of like levity to the game as well. Spoilers, nothing bad happens to the dog, at least in the first game. Or at least it doesn't die. I don't know if nothing bad happens to it.
It goes through things, I'm sure. Can You Pet the Dog does have a Blue Sky.
Okay, well, good. I'll be able to get my news.
It's not cut off.
I'm not cut off. I don't know. It's definitely faded into the background of discourse, at least, which I think is good.
Overall gameplay of this is a combination of kind of like classic adventure, like point and clicky, like use an inventory thing, puzzles. There's some stealth, which actually seems like it got like people responded decently well to. Stealth's so hard. The car rhythm game, the aforementioned car rhythm game, some digging stuff. Good old fashioned puzzle fun.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm interested in playing this game.
It is like $2 currently. The barrier to entry
That's true.
Is low.
You're right. And it probably is frequently at $2, to be honest. Yeah. Maybe if I feel like it's probably pretty short. So
it's about 6 hours is what I saw.
Like, I'm kind of curious about it, honestly, upon reading about it. I don't know if there's many games that are kind of like it in this sort of way,
Overall, people felt like the story was effective. Sometimes kind of heavy-handed, maybe. Like too much kind of telling you what characters are feeling when it's obvious.
I'll wait until I'm in a good mood and like want to bum myself out a little bit,
Nice. Is that how you get when you're in a good mood? I tend to want to bum myself out when I'm already in a bad mood. So that's good. That's probably mentally healthier. That we're like, in a good mood, I would like to feel sad.
I don't know if that's healthier or anything. Well, any last thoughts on Valiant Hearts, or should we talk about bumming ourselves out some more?
Well, bumming ourselves out in mental health is a good transition, but I will say I did sort of expect, I was reading these, I made a note, there are not that many games about World War I. And I fully expected. I went to the Wikipedia page of games about World War I just to check, because I felt like I was going to say that on the show, and you were going to be like, Madeline, that's not true. There are so many games about World War I now. Why are you taking these 2014 articles to still mean what they said then? But there actually are not that many games about World War I, as you discussed. Yeah. I just wanted to register that is anxiety that I have.
I'm sorry, okay?
For this show, that you will fact check me correctly. That I will.
You're allowed to fact check me when I make baseless statements too.
I know, but the fear is that I do lazy research, not that you will fact check me. The fear is that I will be wrong. But yes, speaking of mental health and feeling bumming yourself out or whatever, Wanderstop.
Yes, I played all of Wanderstop when it came out.
We talked about it on the 6 Week show.
We did.
Because I watched when I was in LA staying with my friend Mayana. She played a bunch of this, and I watched some of it, and I slept through some of it.
Very good. As
I often do there.
But yes, it came out at the beginning of March of this year from Ivy Road, which is the new official development studio of Davey Wreden, who is better known for the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide, and published by Annapurna Interactive. Whoever's left there.
Well, who's left anywhere?
If you remember, Annapurna Interactive had a big resignation, like everybody resigned. Like all the games that had been announced to be under them had to come out and be like, this doesn't affect us right now.
Yeah.
It's fine. Anyway, in Wanderstop, you play as Alta, who is a famous, great, top-of-the-world fighter. Undefeated. She enters tournaments and championships, and she wins them all. She's the very best. Until she starts losing. She loses, like, 3 matches in a row, and starts to panic about it, right? Because that's not supposed to happen to her. So she gets a plan to go after this, like, legendary fighter master that lives in this weird forest. But upon entering the forest and running through it, she suddenly gets really tired. She cannot hold her sword, she cannot run for very long, and eventually passes out and is found by Boro, who is the owner of a tea shop within these woods, who picks her up and takes her to the tea shop and invites her to just sort of stay and hang out for a little bit, since she is still incapable of picking up her sword again to leave.
I think this is not what happens in the game, but my Anna and I were convinced that Boro was gonna turn out to be a bad guy. That was not a spoiler. Like, I don't know. But
Boro,
we were like, Boro. This guy seems a little like he's hiding something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it's meant to be a cozy game. That was like their initial thoughts for creating Wanderstop. But
Wikipedia,
eventually,
by the way, I'm interrupting you, straight up refers to it, like, in the sentence where it has, like, it's an action-adventure game, refers to it as a cozy game. We've made the leap.
Yes. The developers, for what it's worth, do sort of still talk about it as a cozy game. They just also talk about they added a lot more writing to it than was initially part of the project. And specifically, kind of everybody who worked on the game, but especially Davey Reedon was like, we just put in sort of our experiences with burnout and our experiences with mental health, and that sort of became what the game was about.
Well, and also important to note that, like, the concept of this game is about 10 years old, I think, and they've been developing it for like 7 or 8 years. Yes. So the genre of cozy games, I don't want to say it's changed, but it's like blown up over that period of time. It's really interesting to think about having made this game that is a cozy game, but in some ways is and in some ways really isn't, pushing back against some of those genre things, at least narratively. Interesting to think about developing that over and like watching these games get bigger and bigger and bigger over that period of time.
There's a lot of like big name interviews with Davey Reedon. He is like,
well, he's a big name guy.
He is a big name guy in game development. Lots of articles I couldn't read, like on the New York Times.
Yeah.
And a few that I shouldn't have been able to read, but the nice Control P trick worked for me on the New Yorker.
Nice.
So I did read that one.
You printed it out.
Yeah,
Nothing
I printed
with that.
Exactly. But essentially, you know, like, Reedon was working on the Stanley Parable, like, from college, I think. Released it, then worked on the Beginner's Guide, released it, like, without taking a break. And apparently after the Beginner's Guide, found himself in a place where he just, like, couldn't write at all. And also in between, like, had a falling out a little bit with someone he worked on the Stanley Parable, who said, like, it's nauseating to be around you, essentially. And, like, due to his, like, mental health struggles at the time as well. So apparently he just drew a bunch of, like, he went to therapy, he started drawing a bunch of, like, nature scenes, was like, okay, I'll make something in nature. Initially wanted to do it, like, very procedurally generated stuff, like, where he didn't have to do like any writing for it. It was just like kind of the environment changing and doing things to sort of tell the story. Found that most people playing it really did not, like, playtesters did not respond well to it. I think one of the quotes he said was like, "It doesn't feel like you want to be working on this." Was the response. Eventually brought on like more people, like Carla Zimonja, who worked on Gone Home. Have we talked about Gone Home on the show before?
My gut answer is no, but I'm not sure.
Man, maybe I should put that in the hat. That's probably 10 years old by now.
Probably.
Who worked as like his editor and started adding more and more writing to it, and then it sort of morphed into what Wanderstop actually is, which is a much more like typical game for him. Yeah. Both in terms of like the narrative structure and also in terms of like there's actually like game systems.
Yeah, describing this game as like the latest game from the guy who developed the Stanley Parable really gives you the wrong idea about the experience that you're about to have.
Yeah, I think I said this on the 6-week show, but like you can sense that sort of viewpoint in it.
Sure, I don't mean that there's nothing carried
It is
over.
not doing the same things as those games are doing on like any level, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, it uses its game systems in interesting and unexpected ways, but it's not really, like, commenting on those game systems in the way that his previous works have.
Yeah, not nearly as much, anyway. Did you read that this basically came from him, like, dreaming he could go to a tea shop in the woods and sit by the water?
Yeah.
Same girl. That hit me kind of hard. Yeah. I was like, ooh. So Emma, as someone who's played this, like, I watched this, and so I have some of the sense of this. You probably talked to some about this in the 6th week, but now that I've read about the game again, I've forgotten exactly what you said. What is your take on how did you feel about the tea brewing? And how it did or didn't, like, support themes? Or support fun?
So, interestingly, I feel like this has to do with, like, your own psychology as a player. Because when they introduce, like, the tea brewing, like, those are things that, like, goals for you to do, but there's no time limit on them. If you make it wrong, you just make it again, right? There's no, like, punishment for making it wrong either. So I never felt like I had to, like, I have to get this done, you know? I kind of just did it as I was also doing other things around the space that were less directed. At a certain point, Boro also starts giving you, like, optional tasks, right? If you talk to him as Alma, and she'll be like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, please tell me what to do. And so he starts being like, well, you can make me some tea every once in a while, or maybe you could, you know, fill the flower pots in that area for me if you would like, or you could put some pictures in the picture frames. So he gives you, like, optional ways to fill your time as well, which kind of feels like it feels like the game is offering you different ways to play it without putting much pressure on you to, like, play it a certain way. So, like, I would do those requests for Boro because I liked, you know, doing things for the character, right? But I wasn't, like, rushing to get those done either. But I can imagine as they're playing, they're like, okay, this is supposed to be something that's reflective for the player. If there aren't options for directions, some players are going to be like, I'm actually just getting more frustrated from this, right? So I think it's actually, through having some sort of structure, is trying to give you, like, okay, so, like, here's an eventual goal for you, but also you can do these other suggested things as well. and sort of balance your time in that way. But I think that if you're really locked in as a player and are really locked into tasks, then that's kind of how you're playing it too, and which in some ways feels intentional, right? It's meant to help you reflect on you in a lot of ways, is how they've talked about it. And I think that in that way it does accomplish that goal.
So you don't feel like there's too much tension between... I certainly read some reviews that were like, there's tension here between the themes of the game, right? Of this like healing from burnout and like taking space for rest and not constantly being on to the next thing and numbers go up or whatever, and some of the kind of gamey elements of it. You feel like those...
Yeah. I didn't feel those at all, personally.
Fair enough.
There is no number go up.
Well, I don't know number go up, but like they're like one of you was like, oh, and I remember this from watching Mayana play. It's like, oh, like you did something for the night, and like he's gonna go away and do something, but he's like back like a minute later.
They're not always back a minute later, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they are, they don't always have a request for you. And also a key part of it is that you very rarely finish a character's story.
Yeah.
Slight spoilers, I guess, but part of the structure of it is there are certain times when Alma has to go reflect on herself.
Alta.
And when Alta has to go reflect on herself. And after those times, the clearing that the tea shop is in kind of shifts form. And it also shifts who your customers are and how they're coming. And so Alta doesn't really have control over when this happens. It just kind of does when it wants to. So even if you're trying to like, oh, do everything for the night as fast as possible, like you aren't allowed to like finish that guy's story. Which I thought was a very interesting choice. There are also built-in times where your only task is like go to the monument and reflect on yourself, and you can choose when to do that as well. Or you can just sort of keep doing things around the clearing if you want.
Okay, so I'm going to give you another question. The Emma Q&A prompted by a Eurogamer. I'm going to read a quote from the Eurogamer review. This also takes me to a slightly bigger problem here, which is you would almost certainly get better results for your own mental state by going outside and doing a bit of gardening of your own, or making yourself an actual, real, elaborate, multi-stage cup of tea and then drinking it, than you would from playing Wanderstop. As anyone who's wrestled with burnout or looked to add a bit of mindfulness to their life will hopefully tell you, there's genuine meditative joy to be had in menial task, but the task itself must be something you can focus on deeply, that has intricacies and foibles, that grounds you in some way to the physical world. In a way, that's the secret to mindful video games too. Any game can be mindful. It needn't have all the sweet and cozy trappings to get there. It just has to feel hypnotically brilliant in itself. This reviewer did not feel like the tea making process was like tactile enough, basically.
Sure.
What is your response to that? That's my question.
Well, the first part, like, wouldn't it be better to go out and garden or make your own tea? Yeah, probably. But also, like, that's a lot more effort for somebody.
Sure.
Right? There's a limited amount of things you can throw into the tea vat in Wanderstop. And also, you don't really have to know that much about tea brewing in reality. So, in that way, like, yes, maybe trying to make my own fancy tea would be more helpful for me, but also it would be way harder. And if I'm in a state where I need to be mindful and perhaps reevaluate myself, maybe I need something simpler to start with before I'm able to get to that point myself. So that's sort of my response to that. I do agree that any video game can be mindful. We did talk about cozy games on the show before. Yep. And I think we talked about how our cozy games are not like...
Yeah, they don't have to be quite so twee.
Yes. They're not what is stereotypically cozy games.
Yeah, Pirate Yakuza have been hidden.
But I did feel like, even though, like, I do not have the same anxieties or struggles that Alta does, I would say. Like, her psychology is very much not my psychology. So her personal journey was not like, oh, I feel very seen by this. But I did feel like the game gave me space to reflect on my own anxieties and the own ways that I approach tasks and the ways that I approach other people, and can think a little bit more about how I can do that in ways that are more valuable to me and to whoever I'm interacting with, I guess. So cool. I feel like the game was successful in its goals for me, personally.
Every game reviewer felt like it was them. Every review I read was like, this game made me weep. This game was about me.
I can see that, of like, especially now we're in, like, game reviewers are whittling down.
Yes, the Hunger
and
Games.
Jobs are whittling down the idea of like, I have to be the best one in order to keep surviving in this space. And what do I do if I lose that space? I can see how the psychology of a game reviewer would very much be Alta's psychology. That's not a diss. That's like a... I can understand.
We don't need to diss that kind of psychology. Yeah, I don't know. I thought about playing this game for the show this week. And, you know, I'm playing Pirate Yakuza. That is part of why I didn't do it. I was like, I'm playing that. I really want to finish that for the 6th week. Like, I shouldn't start this game too. But also, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to, like, evaluate that in myself at this exact moment in my life. So maybe someday I'll circle back around to it. I also want to note, he's given interviews, Davey, afterward, where he's like, I thought making this game would fix my burnout, and it made it worse.
Yeah.
Which, you know, who could have seen that coming, making a video game? But I hope that he's okay.
Yeah. I think his plan was to take a little time off after this game. So I hope that he is on, sipping tea on a beach somewhere like he wanted. But yeah, I also just thought the tea making was really fun, personally. It looked
satisfying. In watching it, it looked satisfying. I could see, again, I have not played it. I have sleepily watched a few hours of it. I could see how it might become less satisfying by hour 11, although I do think the repetitiveness is probably part of the point. But I appreciated in the portion of it that I watched, the kind of like non-manual kind of multi-step process of it.
You're also probably done by hour 11.
Okay, fair enough. Whatever. But my point being, I could see how eventually it might wear on you.
Yes, yeah. But I liked figuring out what sorts of things I could put in there and, making sort of random combinations to try too. So,
yeah. And the Pluffins are very cute.
I hate those little guys.
Emma hates the Pluffins.
They're taking my stuff and moving it everywhere.
But you can pet them. And that's what counts.
You can feed them tea. But once you do feed them tea, they will follow you around and beg for more tea.
That's correct.
Which is correct, but also, like, please stop making your little chirping noises. Very familiar to my very familiar to my household experience with 3 little creatures around right now. So
they learn. Who would have thought?
Well, any last thoughts? Any final thoughts about Wanderstop?
It's very Madelyn core, right? Like, it's actually shocking how Madelyn core this game is. Like, maybe there would be a little more numbers go up in a like a really perfect version of this for me, but like still the kind of like lots of discrete tasks. That's what I meant by the numbers go up, by the way. They aren't literal numbers. It's just like you're checking things off a list. There's tea. Someone's pushing themselves too hard. The cute little, God, we loved you didn't even look at them all. I know we talked about this in the 6-week thing. We loved the little photos that guy had of his son. I can't believe you looked at 2 of them and stopped. They're so fun. Anyway, yeah, very Madelyn core. So Madelyn core that I must wait to play it.
There are also funny little, like, James Bond parody novels in it that you can read that are very good.
Here's the problem, Emma. Maybe you've forgotten.
Sure.
Gamers don't like to read.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot. So true.
So just, like, bear that in mind. Like, cut that out of the show.
I did also get, like, fleeting daydreams while playing this of, like, man, running a little coffee shop, that would be so fun. There wouldn't be any sort of, like, budgeting or customer disputes or anything like that I'd have to deal with. It'd just be nice little, I throw things in a pot and I serve the customer.
Yeah, Inverse in their review described it as the fantasy of an unstressful food service job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yes, like that.
Would be pretty nice. Unfortunately, I don't think... I mean, somewhere it's got to be real. Somebody, probably dozens of people are living that life.
You know, in other countries, they don't work for tips, I guess, so...
I still think that it is probably no good to be a barista there. Like, I hate to say it, I don't think that being a barista just because you are being paid a wage is better.
That's fair.
Or it might be better, but I don't think that it is the experience that you seek.
Right.
But if Emma moves to Belgium or whatever to sling coffee, sling hot chocolate, we'll let you know.
All right. Well, shall we mash?
Yeah. Okay, it's got to be about something serious, but it can't be World War I or Burnout. It's got to be like a totally separate, serious thing. It also can't be like Burnout. It can't be like Burnout from World War I, to be clear.
Sure. It's like... Oh, what's that game called? It's like Necro Barista.
Okay.
There's like a coffee shop or tea shop, whatever, after death. And there's a war going on Earth. And people, soldiers who have, and citizens and civilians, that's the word I'm looking for, who have died during the war come into your shop and you have to deal with the traumas of war through chatting with them and reliving their memories through tea.
That's pretty good. I hate to break it to you that I think it is more of a mashup of like Brewster's Cafe from Animal Crossing and Spiritfarer than it is a mashup of these two games. But it's a pretty good idea.
All I did was add the afterlife to it, so it's not just like you're at a tea shop on the neutral zone, you know?
You're at a tea shop in the DMZ. That would be fun. And then she crash lands in a parachute.
And then she crash lands in a parachute. Just make a crash landing on you game with tea entered into it.
Tea at some point. What is it that they ate that you were like, oh, I'd eat that?
It was just like they were roasting stuff over a fire.
Yeah.
And then they like did shots out of like the oysters.
Oh, that's what it was. You were like, I'd do that.
Yeah, it's like I don't drink, but that seems
very
fun.
Out of character for Emma. Unbelievable that Emma was like, I don't drink, but give me a shot out of an oyster. And I'm just You
can also do like some sort of seltzer out of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just like the idea of like drinking out of the shell. Anyway, that's not a mashup.
That's just a fun fact.
Just a fun fact. I gotta edit those.
No, I mean that's a good game. Try to give me something else though, because I've like already been like, I think that's a different mashup. Hit me with something different. Hit me with like cannot involve a beverage.
It can involve a beverage.
Well, it can't. Okay, it can involve a beverage, but it can't be like a coffee shop.
Okay.
Or a bar. Or oyster shells.
I don't know. It's like some sort of veteran story.
Sure.
Which it kind of is what Wanderstop is too.
Yeah.
Kind of. She just doesn't really fight.
Combat veteran, but yeah.
She doesn't really fight in a war, but yeah. But like you're a veteran from some war and you're trying to reintegrate into society, and you make like a narrative story around that.
Sure. These are all good. I like don't have that much to add because these are all good. I'm trying to come up with something weird.
Okay, I'm ready for whatever.
I don't like that. Something weird has to be like spiritually related to these, not like actually related, right?
Yeah.
So it'd have like cozy game mechanics, but it's got to be about like, I don't know.
I feel like you could make. There's something to like making a game with cozy game mechanics that's also kind of like a horror game.
Uh-huh.
I don't really know what that would turn into, but I do think there's something interesting there, you know?
It is, yeah, like is the thing, like you discover partway through that like what you're doing is actually like Soylent Green is people?
No, I don't think it should be like a surprise. I think that it should be like you got like the traditional cozy things going on, but the vibes are really rancid throughout the whole thing.
That's good. That's a good idea.
Again, I don't really know what the specifics
actually,
of that
I hate to say it. No, that's a bad idea. Because
why?
The whole point of cozy games, I feel like there's a tension between horror, which is often built on like a surprise, right? Or something unexpected, or that sort of thing. I not always. I'll circle back, but like much horror is kind of built on that. I mean, obviously the jump scare, but like the realization that something isn't as it seems, or like the creepiness as you enter new places and new things. And I feel like cozy game mechanics are very much built on like familiarity, and you're doing the same thing over and over. And so there's like a little bit of a tension there between like, and maybe this is the point of the game, that at first it's unsettling and then like you can get used to anything, right? But if you're kind of doing the same thing over and over, it's hard to think of maintaining the horror vibe. That's my question for you.
I don't have an answer. I just think there's potential there, and somebody smarter than me should run with it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely. I agree. I agree there's potential there, for sure. Could we do a cozy game? This is a joke.
Okay.
Could we do a cozy game set in the trenches?
That feels like what's that game called? That game where all the family members have died and there's like little mini games.
I don't know what that is.
We've talked about it on the show. It's that game where like there's the one where he's like cutting fish but also like daydreaming at the same time. And like the one that, man, I can't believe I can't remember that game's name. But anyway, it's like that. It's like a little mini game vignette, feels like a little bit. That's like part of like a larger experience. Because I don't know if you could make a full game out of that, but I do like the vibes, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I don't like the vibes, but you know what I mean?
It does, yeah. I don't think you could play that for more than a little bit of time, but yes, I feel like there's something to that. And it would have to end pretty bleak. Yeah. She's looking it up, ladies and gentlemen. She's Googling right now. Game where family dead, mini games.
I don't know how to Google it.
Yeah. Game where family dead, mini games didn't work. Chopping fish.
Man, this is gonna kill me. No, I don't know.
It'll come back to you in the middle of the night.
It will. Edith Finch.
It was really Edith Finch? No, it wasn't.
What Remains of Edith Finch? That's what I'm thinking of.
I thought that was way too obvious to be what you were talking about.
Like I said, I know, I just couldn't remember the title. It should have been something obvious.
Well, I thought it was okay. Yeah.
The guy with the fish. What did you think I was talking about?
Well, I don't know. I haven't actually played What Remains of Edith Finch.
Okay.
So the concept was
not fit. It's not Edith Fish. Edith Finch.
I thought that was weird in my head for a minute. I was like, wait a minute. Is she a fish? Oh, God.
But you know what I mean? You know what I mean now?
What remains of Edith Fish? All right. Well, I don't think I'm going to beat your, Spiritfarer Brewster's Cafe. So we'll stick with that. Listeners, how do you feel about a cozy horror game or a cozy trench game? Or how do you feel about any of those things? Do you think that there should be a video game about Franz Ferdinand? The answer is yes. Do you think there should be more World War I games? Is Netflix games still a thing? If you have thoughts about this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, where you can also find Can You Bet the Dog at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat we're about to pull from, and read our blog. But most importantly, if you enjoyed the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you find your podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon Eastern. It's Emma's side quest last week. I had a moment of panic that it is a 6-week show next week. It is not because of
yes, it is.
PAX.
Isn't it?
What was your side quest before PAX?
Didn't we do my side quest? Wasn't my side quest before PAX was note-taking?
Shoot. Was yours really note-taking? Is next week 6 weeks? You're kidding me.
It's 7 weeks, in fact.
No! I'm not going to be done.
Sorry.
Gosh, darn it.
Yes, it's 7 weeks in gaming next week.
Well, okay. Look forward to that. 7 weeks in gaming. Woohoo.
Woohoo.
But Emma, what are we talking about? No, wait, it's not next week. Oh my god. It's 2 weeks. No! Wait, I'm so confused. Week. Oh, the PAX episode is throwing me off. Sorry.
You're
okay, yeah, that's next
me.
week. In 2 weeks. Jesus Christ. In 2 weeks, what are we talking about?
In 2 weeks.
Cut all of that. Cut that all out. Okay. Edit me to look smart.
In 2 weeks, for our old game, we were talking about Angry Birds.
We're talking about Angry Birds. Wow. And speaking of burnout. Okay.
And
no,
for our
new bird. Never mind. Sorry. Yikes.
For our new game, we'll be talking about Tactical Breach Wizards.
Can't wait.
So look forward to that.
Oh man, Emma, my brain is done. That's it for this week's show. Sign us off.
This week, I hope that the tea that you drink is beautifully multicolored.